I'm Jason UFC, and today we have a story about UFC middleweight contender Robert Whittaker thinks it's fair Dricus Du Plessis is getting the middleweight title shot at UFC 297. Robert Whittaker thinks it's only right for Dricus Du Plessis to get the next UFC middleweight title shot. Dricus Du Plessis cemented himself as the UFC middleweight #1 contender after stopping Robert Whittaker, Bobby Knuckles, by second round TKO at UFC 290 in July. But when he couldn't make a quick, unprecedented turnaround for UFC 293 2 months later, the promotion UFC handed the #1 contendership to Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland defeated Israel Adesanya by unanimous decision to become the new UFC middleweight champion. Dricus Du Plessis would find himself passed up again. The UFC opted to dub Hamza Chimaev, welterweight, versus Kamaru Usman, welterweight, as the UFC #1 contendership fight in the middleweight division at UFC 294. Fortunately for Dricus Du Plessis, the victorious Hamza Chimaev majority decision injured his right hand in the fight, which led to Dricus Du Plessis getting the title shot versus Sean Strickland in the UFC 297 headliner in Toronto, January 20th, 2024. This is what Robert Whittaker said. It kind of cleared a lot of things up because the division is in a really crazy spot right now, the middleweight division. Robert Whittaker told Submission Radio, there's so many fighters that are already busy or that are inactive or that are just sitting on the sidelines, and with the win/losses that we've had in the top five, it just shuffled everything up. And then you have Chimaev and Usman coming in and fighting for the title shot, allegedly just shaking everything up. But to hear Dricus Du Plessis is getting the title shot versus Sean Strickland, I think this is what Robert Whittaker says, I think it's fair because he, being Dricus Du Plessis, wasn't in a lot of the talks for the next title shot with Sean. And where did it leave him? Good question. Where did that leave him? Dricus Du Plessis. Props to Dricus Du Plessis. He did defeat me, and I think that earned something. I mean, yes, Robert Whittaker, former UFC middleweight champion. Robert Whittaker thinks timing has a lot to do with the recent UFC title fights in the middleweight division. I think the moral of the story, Robert Whittaker said, the division, especially the top five and the stakes that we play at, is just rife with opportunity. And Sean is a perfect example of being ready and in the right place at the right time, and obviously the skills to back it up. Okay, yeah, that's kind of interesting. I definitely agree with Robert Whittaker. Listen, I am a MMA casual, so I don't follow everything in the sport, but it seemed to make the most sense for Dricus Du Plessis to get the title shot. The UFC ironically kind of backed itself into a corner when I wouldn't say but when Dricus Du Plessis couldn't make a quick turnaround versus Israel Adesanya, right? Like if when the UFC had Dricus Du Plessis versus Robert Whittaker in July, they said that was a #1 contendership fight, and the winner of that would fight for the championship. But the problem is that the championship fight was going to be 2 months later in September. So you can't really have a #1 contendership fight, right, with the winner having to turn around in 6 weeks. So you see here what happened with Chimaev. There was a lot of things that kind of went against Chimaev. One, he's a welterweight, unranked middleweight. He fought a welterweight, another unranked middleweight. Chimaev won by majority decision, not a unanimous decision, not a TKO first round submission, not a dominant performance. Kamaru Usman accepted the fight on like 10 days notice. So, and then also Chimaev, when he was ranked in the UFC official rankings, I don't know if that's done by the media or the UFC, but the UFC put it up on their official rankings when Chimaev did make his way into the UFC rankings in the middleweight division. He's ranked number 9 or number 7. I think it was ranked number 7 or ranked number 9. So it would be kind of crazy for the UFC to give Chimaev a middleweight championship fight after a majority decision victory over a welterweight, right? And then he's ranked number 7 or number 9 in the middleweight division. Dricus Du Plessis coming off of a second round TKO finish over a former UFC middleweight champion, right? Like you had to give it to Dricus Du Plessis. And like I said, I'm not Dricus Du Plessis' biggest fan or anything like that, but I just, a lot of the comments before this fight has been announced was, oh, Dricus Du Plessis was scared. He was ducking Israel Adesanya. You can't turn down UFC championship fights. And now you look at Dricus Du Plessis now, and it's like he's like 2 months away from fighting Sean Strickland in Canada for the UFC middleweight championship. Like I personally think he made the right decision, and it wasn't even a decision he had to make, right? Like you cannot have a number 1 contendership fight in July and say the winner of that fight, whether if it's a 3-round battle and they have to go to war, they have to turn around and fight a middleweight champion in their backyard in 2 months. That doesn't make sense. It's never been done. You can see Chimaev here, right? Like he got injured in his fight with Usman, or I believe it was like a torn ligament in one of his hands. So he wasn't going to be able to, turn around and fight Sean Strickland in January either, right? So it's just like, but I do think after this fight, since this does open up the entire division, who does Robert Whittaker fight? Does Robert Whittaker fight someone like Roman Dolidze? Where's Jared Cannonier in this? We've heard Israel Adesanya has said he's not coming back into 2027 or something like that. I don't. Maybe that was fake news. Like I said, I don't follow everything in MMA, but that was the last thing I heard about Israel Adesanya. So who knows what's going on there? Like I said, Jared Cannonier, he said something about his ACL was messed up. So who knows what's going on there? And also, how long is Chimaev going to be out, right? Like Chimaev hasn't been the most active fighter in a while. We did hear he has a torn ligament in his hand. Does that mean he's ready to come back to fight by next April or something like that? The winner of Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland, is Chimaev still the number 1 contender? I know some people are saying that Israel Adesanya may come back and fight Chimaev. That would be interesting, right? That would be interesting. But is Israel Adesanya coming back? Who knows? Maybe Chimaev and Robert Whittaker fight. Maybe Robert Whittaker fights Usman. What happens if Colby Covington wins the belt versus Leon Edwards? Does Usman go back to the welterweight division and get another title shot? Right? What happens if Dricus Du Plessis defeats Sean Strickland? Does Israel Adesanya come back and instead of fighting Chimaev, he fights Dricus Du Plessis? It's like there's so many moves that's gonna happen in the next few months, which is great. That's great to see. But like I said, I am a MMA casual, so what the hell do I know? But let me know your opinion of this story. Who do you think is gonna win? Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. I have to say I'm team Dricus Du Plessis at this point, right? Even though I'm not his biggest fan. But I have to say, for 2024, I'm definitely going to be team Dricus Du Plessis. But let me know your opinion of this story. I'm Jason, UFC. Today we have a story about UFC middleweight contender Robert Whittaker thinks it's fair. It's fair that Dricus Du Plessis is getting the middleweight title shot at UFC 297 versus Sean Strickland. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button, and please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.